Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am back again with another Mystery Monday video. Today we will be talking about a missing person case. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and stick around. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below letting me know what other type of videos you would like to watch. Other than that, let's get into it. Today we will be talking about the disappearance of Crystal Rogers. And if you guys have not heard about this case, it's a little bit crazy because there's a lot of things that go on in the case that surround this family. I'll get a little bit into it in just a moment. So before I get into Crystal, I just want to point out something that happened to this family a couple of years before the disappearance of Crystal, and that was with Crystal's Aunt Sherry, was Crystal's dad's sister. And in January 9th, 1979, Sherry actually disappeared when she was going to her local town to run some errands. At the time that she went missing, she was pregnant and she was no longer with the baby's dad. The dad didn't want anything to do with the baby and they no longer had a relationship. That case actually went cold. To this day, they have not closed the case. They don't really know what happened to Sherry. They never actually found her body, but they did find her purse. But I just wanted to put that out there because, again, she disappeared in 1979 and Sherry disappeared a couple years later. So at the time of her disappearance, she's actually 35 years old. She was a mother to 5 children, and some of the children did have different dads. And although the relationship with those dads didn't work out for Sherry, a lot of the dads were still involved in the kids' lives. At the time of her disappearance, she was also dating a man by the name of Brooks. Growing up, she was the oldest of her siblings, and she was known for being a shy person, but really, really easygoing. A lot of people stated that she was one of the nicest people they've ever met. Yet, she was very humble and she was a very selfless person. She did end up having her first kid at a young age. And, she was a great mom. She had 5 children. And you can only imagine that that must be pretty difficult for a single mom to handle. So she did work multiple jobs. She was married once, but the family did state that the marriage that she had with this individual was really, really difficult for her because he was just a really controlling and abusive person. So a couple years later, she ends up meeting a guy named Brooks, and he was a landlord for a couple of different properties, and that's how she ended up meeting him. I believe she rented from him, and they kind of hit it off. They started dating, and she ended up getting pregnant with their son Eli. They moved in together. They continued their relationship. They never actually married, but they still ended up living together and kind of creating their own life. In the beginning, her family really liked Brooks. They thought he was a good guy. She ended up having a baby with him. At the time of her disappearance, the baby was 2.5 years old. But regardless, they liked Brooks. They thought he was a good person until a couple of months into her relationship, her family started to notice that Brooks was a little bit odd. And one of the biggest things that stood out to them was the fact that he didn't really treat the other children that well. So of course, like I said, her other children were all from different dads. Not all of them, but some of them, they had different dads. So pretty much Brooks wasn't their dad. And Brooks kind of made that known. One of the things that I actually read was the fact that when they would go grocery shopping, he would make her buy groceries for her other children, and he would buy groceries for his kid, so Eli, the kid that they shared. And to me, that was just a big no-no. Like, I don't care if you're getting with someone and that someone has kids, you better be treating their kids right. And like, don't do that. Don't say, I get that sometimes having, like I said, 5 children, that can be, financially stressing. But if you know that she has those kids, then you need to take the responsibility of treating them just the way that you would treat your own. So that to me just seems really, really messed up. Brooks' family was a very well-known family around town. Brooks himself was very well-known around town. It was known, like, at one point he ran for sheriff. He was a known local person. A lot of people knew his family. A lot of people knew his brother. His brother was actually a cop for the county as well. So moving forward to July 3rd, 2015, they were going to have a date night, and Brooks and Crystal ended up taking their other kids to their dad's house, and they had told the kids that they were going to get a babysitter for Eli, but they didn't. They ended up keeping Eli and taking Eli with them for their date night. So pretty much all the other kids went with their dads, but Eli stayed home with them. The part that seemed weird to me was the fact that they lied to the kids and told them that a babysitter was going to take care of Eli. I didn't really get that. I thought that was pretty messed up too. I mean, you're sending off the other kids, but you're going to keep your own. I don't know. That just seems odd to me. I think the part that seems odd is the fact that he lied. But moving forward, they ended up taking Eli to their date night. And you know, that day was a pretty normal day. She went to Walmart, she ran some errands, and then she ended up going home. But a couple of hours into the night, Crystal's mom, Sherry, ended up getting a message from Kaylee, who was Crystal's oldest daughter. And Kaylee was pretty much telling Sherry if she had heard from Crystal because she could not get in contact with her. And Sherry had not heard from Crystal, so she decided to reach out to Crystal herself. And Crystal was not answering her phone. So she ended up leaving her a voicemail, thinking that maybe she had already fallen asleep. And nobody could really get in contact with her that day. So then the next day, Crystal's sister Brooke ended up reaching out to Crystal, trying to get in contact with her too, because her mom had told her that nobody could reach Crystal. But at that time, Crystal's phone was turned off, and that seemed really odd to them because it was one thing for Crystal not to answer the phone, but it was another thing for Crystal's phone to be turned off. So at that point, they were not able to reach out to Crystal, and I don't really know if they tried reaching out to Brooks or if they tried going over to their house. I couldn't really find that information. But regardless, the family ended up going to the police department where they ended up filing a missing persons report. So on their way to the police department, they actually ran into Brooks, you know, Crystal's husband, or Crystal's boyfriend actually, sorry. And they asked Brooks if he had heard from Crystal, which Brooks stated no. He was very nonchalant about it, but he pretty much stated that he had not heard from her and that he wasn't really worried. Because sometimes when she was mad, she would leave and go to her cousin's house or just leave and wanted some time alone. But he wasn't worried about the fact that nobody could actually get in contact with her. And later on, there's this interview he did with Nancy Grace. And if you guys know Nancy Grace, I know a lot of people don't like her, but I sometimes do like listening to her interviews, because she does grill people about stuff. And she told him, you know, were you worried about the fact that she was gone, or why didn't you try reaching out to her? He stated that he didn't try reaching out to her because that sometimes when she was mad, she would leave and go to her cousin Sabrina's house and just spend the night there. She would pretty much try to take it easy and kind of vent to Sabrina. But Sabrina, when she was interviewed, stated that yes, before, when Brooks and Crystal would get into an argument, Crystal would leave and go to Sabrina's house, but would never stay the night, that she would only be there for a couple of hours. She would vent to her and then she would go back home. So the fact that Crystal was not home at night, that was a red flag to Sabrina, because Crystal had never stayed away from her kids, at least not for an argument that she had with Brooks. So Crystal's parents continued to the police department where they ended up filing the missing persons report. And while they're there, Crystal's brother Casey got a phone call from Crystal's ex-husband's son stating that they saw Crystal's car on Bluegrass Parkway. So Casey and his dad ended up going to Bluegrass Parkway to just go and see if that was really Crystal's car. And when they got there, they realized that it was Crystal's car. They found her 2007 Chevrolet maroon colored car. And she had a flat tire, so one of her tires was flat and the 3 other tires were low on air. However, it wasn't flat to the point where it would have stopped her from driving. She could have still drove the car. The weirdest part was the fact that the keys were still in the ignition and her purse was still in the car. The driver's seat was also pushed all the way back to the point where Crystal wouldn't have been able to reach the pedals. And it was known that Crystal actually drove really close to the steering wheel, so that was very uncommon for her. Now, they did bring up the fact that at one point, Crystal had one time gotten a flat tire, but instead of stopping, she drove all the way home. Even though she knew she had a flat tire, she drove all the way home to the point where there was no more tire left and it was only the rim. And the reason to why that's brought up is because why would she stop now, especially when the tire is not that low? What made her stop this time but not last time, especially if it was at night? So a lot of people, of course, think that this was staged. Why was the seat pushed all the way back? Why was her purse still in the car? The keys were still in the ignition. The tires were low but not flat. And her history of having a flat tire before but not stopping. All these things stood out to people, and of course there were more questions than answers. So on July 5th, everyone, volunteers, family members, police officers, they started searching for Crystal in the area where they found her car. The news media was there. They were reporting everything that was happening, talking to family members, and of course one of the things that stood out was the fact that Brooks was not there, and it is known that he actually never helped out with the search. So Brooks was known to be a pretty controlling person. A lot of her family members and friends stated that when Crystal got with Brooks in the beginning, everything was fine. But like I said, a couple months in, everything started to change drastically in the relationship. They noticed that Brooks was really controlling with Crystal. He wouldn't let her talk to specific people, and he wouldn't really let her go out anymore with her friends or her family. On the 8th of July, Brooks actually went into the police headquarters to talk to investigators. He stated that on the night that she disappeared, Brooks, Crystal, and their son Eli went to his mom's house, which was known as a farm because it was a pretty large land and she had farm animals, so everybody called it the farm. He stated that that night they fed the cows. They ended up lighting a fire to kind of get rid of some stuff because that's usually how they would get rid of waste, and that he left to go get some stuff for the cows. And they did capture him leaving and coming back on camera, which his reasoning for that was the fact that he had to go and get some stuff for the cows. And he stated that towards the end of the night, all three of them took a walk around the farm and then they ended up going home. The weirdest part of this was the fact that the walk was around midnight and it was freezing cold, it was raining, and they had their little baby with them. Like, why would anybody walk around the farm at 12 at night? I don't know, especially when it's raining and it's cold and you have your baby with you. That makes no sense. They ended up going home around midnight, and this really stood out to the police officers. They started asking him, you know, why were you guys out that late? Why would you guys walk around that late, especially if you guys have your kid with you? And he just stated that Crystal really liked walking late at night. But he stated that they went home, all three of them, and that him and Eli went to bed and Crystal stayed in the living room, and the last time he saw her was there while she was playing video games on her phone. The next morning, he got up at 8 a.m. When he got up, she wasn't there. He assumed that she had left her cousin's house, so he just ended up getting Eli ready and they went back to the farm. So he said that he called Crystal twice that day and she never answered. So he just assumed that she was mad and that she just needed her time. So he wanted to give her that space. However, when police officers asked him if they had an argument or if there was a reason to why she was mad, he stated that no, there wasn't. They didn't have an argument. He wouldn't know why she was mad. So I don't know how he came to the conclusion that she needed her time away. Like, if you guys didn't fight, if you didn't know why she was mad, why would you automatically assume that she was pissed and needed her time alone? So he stated that while her parents went to go report her missing, he actually had a family gathering to attend. So she disappeared on Friday, and on Saturday, her parents went to the police department to report her missing, and he went to a family gathering. So then they asked him about his whereabouts for Sunday, you know, what did you do? And he stated that he doesn't remember Sunday. He doesn't remember what he did. He doesn't remember if there was anything important about that day. He just does not remember Sunday. Of course, police officers are asking him about Sunday. They're telling him, how could you not, how could you not remember what happened Sunday? They started to really grill him about this stuff, and he ends up getting really upset. He tells them that he's already going through so much. His wife is missing. He has these kids that he needs to take care of, and that they should not be screaming at him because he's already going through so much. So when the police officers ended up looking through his call records, they noticed that he actually got a call late night on Friday. And they asked him, who did you speak to on Friday? Whose number is this? And he stated that he didn't know. He didn't remember who called him. He doesn't remember what they spoke about. So they made him call the number back. The person that answered the phone was a gentleman that was trying to get some information about one of the properties that Brooks was renting out. And he stated that when he called Brooks that Friday night, Brooks told him that he needed some more information, but that he needed to speak to his wife, Crystal, first before moving forward. But what was weird about that was, why would you tell him that you need to speak to your wife first and that you were going to reach back out to him when supposedly your wife was there with you? You know what I mean? You stated that you had a date night with your wife, that you guys went to the farm, that you guys took a walk and went back home. Yet when that person calls, all of a sudden you're not with your wife and you need to contact this person later because you need to speak to your wife first. You know what I mean? Like, that makes no sense. His brother ends up calling him while he's being interrogated by the police officers. And remember, his brother is also a police officer. In this interview, you can hear Brooks telling his brother that he's doing his job. He's just here talking to the police officers, doing as much as he can because, you know, he's going through so much and he really wants his wife to be found, or he really wants Crystal to be found. Then it sounds like his brother's telling him to stop the interview and actually leave, that he does not need to speak to the police officers. And Brooks tells his brother, oh, should I not speak to them? I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And he's like, okay, well, my brother wants me to end this interview. And he ends it. And first of all, if you want Crystal, your girlfriend, the mother of your son, to be found, why would you stop the interview? Second of all, your brother is a police officer. Why would he want you to stop the interview? He knows what it's like to pretty much investigate a case. More than anything, he should be supportive. So this whole thing just does not make sense to me. So police officers reach out to Brooks' brother Nick, asking him if maybe he wants to come in to get interviewed, and he says absolutely not. I'm not gonna go and talk to you guys. Even though you guys are my colleagues, I will not talk to you guys at all. Then on July 10th, the reward money is moved up to $71,000. That same day, they end up searching Nick and Brooks' mom's farm and all of the surrounding areas. They did talk to some of the neighbors, and the neighbors stated that that day they did see Nick moving stuff out of his car to his mom's car. So on July 12th, they did end up taking a couple of different people to search the lake, the local lake around town. And the reason why they did that was because cadaver dogs actually got a hit on the lake, pretty much sensing that there was human remains or something like that in that area. They didn't search the whole lake because the lake is really difficult for them to search. It's a huge lake, and they were only able to search certain parts of it, but nothing was ever found at the lake other than the fact that the dogs picked up a scent. So on July 15th, they actually get Nick to go in and get interviewed. And they tell Nick, you know, we have footage of you and your brother on the night that Crystal went missing, and we see that you guys are together. What were you guys doing? And Nick says he does not remember. He absolutely cannot remember what they did. So I'm just really curious to see what's going on with these two brothers and why they keep losing their memory, because I don't know, that seems odd. But they did find out that Nick was driving the cop car that day, and when they did luminol testing on the car, the trunk absolutely lit up. Now, luminol testing can pick up anything. It can pick up blood, bodily fluids, anything in general, saliva, and they don't really know what got picked up because they couldn't really identify what it was. It wasn't blood, but I'm telling you guys, the trunk lit up. Also notice that a fire extinguisher from the cop car was missing, because every cop car has a fire extinguisher, and the one from this car was missing. And they did a polygraph test on him, and guess what? He failed. The one question he failed was, do you know where Crystal is? And of course, just like anything, polygraph tests are not 100% accurate. They're not admissible in court. You can't really use it. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, he failed. But the thing is, there's a lot of, you know, innocent people that have failed it, and a lot of freaking guilty people that have passed it. So you have to just take that with a grain of salt. Now, that interview with Nick and the detectives is insane. Like, Nick is an ass. I'm sorry, but he is, and he is getting completely angry with the detectives, and he's like cussing at them. And I can see why you would get upset or what could upset you, but his behavior is just completely not okay. So they end up firing him a couple months later. The sheriff's office actually goes on TV, and they say that they're still continuing the investigation with Crystal, and that they also had to fire one of their own because they felt like Nick was becoming a problem with the investigation. One of the things that the family noticed was the fact that the police was really lacking with the investigation. They ended up hiring their own private investigator, and the private investigator was really surprised at the fact that the police turned Crystal's car back to the family only like a month or a few months after they had found it, and they didn't really test the car. I don't know why that is, but they found that there was really no dusting anywhere, and they pretty much didn't handle the car like they should have. They did end up bringing cadaver dogs to sniff Crystal's car, and there was a hit on the trunk, but there was nothing that was found. There was no blood, nothing that could have been traced, so really nothing came from the car. But again, if they would have handled it carefully and like they should have in the beginning of the case, who knows what they could have found. At this point, it was no longer really evidence because it was turned back to the family. So one of the things was that Crystal's dad, Tommy, was really involved with the case. He was really disappointed in the way that the detectives had handled the case. So he really took it upon himself to search and investigate and do his own research. By the ending of 2016, he and the family really felt like they were getting somewhere with their investigation. They ended up creating their own like website called Team Crystal, where anybody with leads or anybody with information could go and kind of have a platform where they can talk to someone. But unfortunately, on November 19th, 2016, when Tommy went hunting with his sons and his grandsons, he was shot. He had gone hunting in this area for over 10 years. Everyone knew that this was his hunting area. I mean, the whole town knew Tommy, and they all knew that this was an area he frequented often. The guys were in the car, his sons were in the car, and they said that Tommy got off and he was with his grandson, Crystal's son, and that they heard a gunshot. And when they got off to take a look at what it was, Tommy was on the floor bleeding out, and they didn't know who shot Tommy. Tommy ended up dying at the scene, and when the detectives went to go look at the shooting and what had happened, so you'll see that it's a land it's surrounded by trees, and there's this one specific area where it looks like trees were cut off, and as they got close, they noticed that branches were actually cut off of certain trees to kind of make it an easier view of the other side. So it kind of looks like somebody cut off the branches so that they could have a clear shot of Tommy. The whole town knew that this was no accident. I mean, they all loved Tommy, but Tommy was a really well-known person. Everyone knew that he was really kind to everyone, and I mean, it's heartbreaking for this family. They lose their sister in 1970s, they lose Crystal, and a few years later they lose Tommy. And everyone knew, you know, this is not an accident. Tommy was getting somewhere with this investigation. He was really putting in the hours. He had a lot of stuff. He had a lot of stuff that detectives didn't even have, like video cameras of Crystal that day and a whole bunch of other things. And people just kind of knew that Tommy was getting close to really finding out what happened to his daughter, and whoever killed Crystal knew this and had to take him out. Before his death, Tommy did tell his family like he felt like he was being stalked. He didn't know by who, but he felt like somebody was watching him. And of course, it's unfortunate that Tommy died because he was really the one person that was pushing Crystal's investigation. And although he died, a lot of the things that he found out, a lot of the files and videos that he had have been kept by the family. So thankfully, the family still has that information. But unfortunately, it's so sad that this family had to go through all that and that Tommy had to be killed as well. But yeah, you guys, that's all that's found in this investigation. There's so much info on this case, so if you guys are ever interested, I would recommend you guys to just look at articles, you know, watch other videos, because there's so many other things. Another thing that I just want to point out really quick was that in 2015, a gentleman by the name of Danny Singleton was charged with 38 counts of perjury and giving false testimonies on Crystal's case, and he ended up being Brooke's friend, like childhood friend. So that's just something I wanted to put out there. But yeah, you guys, there's a lot of information with this case. I highly recommend that you guys, you know, look into the articles. So yeah, if you guys have any information on this case, please remember to reach out to the local police department. And again, they still have the website for Crystal, so I'll try to link that down below for you guys. Other than that, you guys stay safe. I hope that you guys have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you guys next time.